interesting that with at least 60 years of the food and medical industry telling us how we should eat, we are still becoming some of the most unhealthy people in the world. We eat lean meat, we eat low fat, we try to eat lots of fiber, and yet we lead the world in heart disease and obesity. Cholesterol is the ultimate boogeyman, blamed for our heart attacks and strokes. Then, when we've done all that we can to prevent these deadly events from happening, we are told that if we still suffer a heart attack, it's simply a case of bad genetics. Let's first look at our ancestors. If they survived childhood diseases and common epidemics, they lived well until their 90s or past 100. They lived on a diet of foods that were in season, that they grew themselves or were able to pick in the wild. They ate plenty of animal foods. One example is one of my ancestors who, in spite of having at least 15 children, lived to be approximately 110 years old. What has changed since then? I mean, after all, medical strides have helped wipe out many of the epidemics that were so devastating to them. Infant mortality is greatly improved. Babies now are born in sterile hospitals instead of in their homes. Traumatic injury deaths have also improved. Our ancestors had to worry about serious injuries, such as a broken leg, because it could be deadly. My great-grandfather adopted a boy as their own son. He broke his leg in a carriage accident and ended up dying about 3 days later from this injury. Another area of improvement, social conditions. They vastly improved our living conditions. For example, public water supplies are controlled, monitored, and chlorinated to prevent as much bacteria as possible. Food safety regulations flow from the FDA and USDA. Cabbage alone has hundreds of pages regulating its growth and production. Improved sanitation with organized garbage collection. No longer do we simply toss it out on the street. Well, with all of these improvements, why are we faced with more and more debilitating diseases at younger and younger ages? We have thousands of modern medications, with new ones receiving FDA approval every day. We have huge mills and processing plants churning out cheaper and more varied foods non-stop. New and improved are the catchwords. With these modern improvements, why does our nation's health continue its downward spiral? Here is some food for thought. I personally question the motives of the current day medical industry. Although there are good, caring doctors out there, overall, they do not make any money from healthy people. I read one time about some backwards little country in Asia that made a law that said a doctor could only send out a bill for payment if his patient got better. That little backwards country was China. Pharmaceuticals have stockholders to whom they owe a greater allegiance than the person who trusts his or her life to their products. It is the same with the food industry. They don't make money from people growing their own vegetables or buying locally produced food. They can't make as much money from us if we are eating food that has been minimally processed. These highly processed food items line the grocery store shelves, promising more and more convenience, microwave friendly, etc. But cheaper and cheaper is not better. It is not healthier. Quality is cut in order to make food cheaper. Not to mention the impact on the environment when these foods have to be shipped thousands of miles to be on our grocery store shelves. There are no easy answers. We are a nation consumed by the need for instant gratification. We want fast food, drive-thrus, microwavable food, ready to heat and eat food. We have lost sight of the eat to live mindset. Rather, we have the live to eat mentality. What are we losing in this quest for faster and cheaper? First and foremost, recognize that these industries do not necessarily have our best interests at the top of their priority lists. Any business, no matter what it produces, has the bottom line as the first priority. Therefore, they are constantly searching for ways to make their products cheaper. This means more processing, more inferior, therefore cheaper ingredients, more chemicals to make something sit in warehouses for months and still appear fresh. For example, cooking oil is allowed to be deodorized so that the consumer will not know that the oil is already rancid. Production will be consolidated to minimize their cost, thereby requiring the long-distance shipping and long-term storage of products. The end result is more packaging so that the product will withstand shipment and more fossil fuels expended to get the product to the regional warehouses. There are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. Hasn't the medical industry been confused for decades over what's been referred to as the French enigma? By this, they mean they are puzzled by how the French can eat whole-fat cheeses, cream-filled desserts, organ meats in the form of pâtés and caviar, and still remain healthy, slender, and free from heart disease. This alone should be a warning beacon that something is wrong with our fundamental premise, that cholesterol and saturated fats are deadly. Myth: saturated fats clog arteries. Truth: the fatty acids found in artery clogs are mostly unsaturated, 74%, of which 41% are polyunsaturated. This is from the Lancet, 1994. But wait a minute, aren't those the fats that they tell us to use? The other warning beacon should be to trust our bodies. There is a reason that those French desserts and treats taste so good and are so satisfying. Our bodies know what real food is and what is not. Those wonderful fats and broths consumed early in a meal send a signal of satiation to the brain. How often do we eat a complete meal only to be back in the kitchen 20 minutes later wanting something? Now, finally, it's time to defy the Dictocrats. Just start with a few of the basics. Throw out your margarine. Get real butter. If you doubt the difference, try a small experiment. Take 2 plates, put a stick of margarine on one and a stick of butter on the other. Leave them both out in the open and see which one the critters go after. I think we had an earlier example of seeing how the critters like to go after the butter. They know what real food is as well. Just for your information, margarine is only 1 molecule away from being plastic. Secondly, throw out the canola oil. Most people do not realize that there is no such thing as a canola flour, in spite of the pretty little pictures on the bottles. Canola stands for Canadian Oil Low Acid. It is from the rapeseed plant, which is known for its toxicity to humans. It was originally manufactured as an industrial oil. 3, use real eggs, farm fresh eggs. There is nothing to compare. Those insipid, pale versions in the stores come from literal egg factories, where the hens never see daylight. Not only are the eggs nutritionally deficient, but the conditions are inhumane. Finally, don't be a willing victim. Do some research. An interesting point. In spite of the medical world's claim that cholesterol is bad, see if you can find an actual scientific report proving such. My bet is you won't. Even in the television ads for cholesterol-lowering drugs, pay attention to how they say cholesterol might lead to a heart attack. It boils down to the fact that we have to take responsibility of our own health. We have to recognize that our current system is tilted to line the pockets of major industries. In closing, I'd like to relate a personal experience I had just a few years ago. It started small. I had tingling in my fingertips and in my toes. I had no idea what it was. I went to the chiropractor. It was not a pinched nerve. I made several trips to the doctor. They put me on anti-inflammatories. all kinds of medication for weeks and for months. Nothing gave me any relief. I was not even able to sleep at night. In chance conversation with a friend whose son was in molecular biology, I told him the symptoms, and he made the off remark, it sounds like your mitochondria are brain dead. Not being a science person, I kind of let that go past me, but later questioned him again to see what was wrong. He gave me some suggestions. For 2 days, I did something as simple as using homemade beef broth and taking cod liver oil. Within 48 hours, all of my symptoms of months were gone. A final quote for your contemplation. If people let government decide what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in as sorry a state as are the souls of those who live under tyranny. Thomas Jefferson.